Hey everyone, it's Friday. It's always a wonderful day of the week. I'm Carrie Champion in studio with Skip Bayless. Stephen A. Smith joins us from Philadelphia. How are you, sir?
Good morning. How y'all doing?
You should be ecstatic. What a great night for New York sports, even though you're in Philadelphia.
It was a fantastic night for Derek Jeter fans, for Yankee fans. But unfortunately, it was a fantastic night for the New York Giants. For me personally, the fact that I had to be subjected to what I witnessed in the nation's capital last night, that kind of just stained a lot of stuff. Not too much, though, but it was bad.
Well, let's just talk about it.
Aren't you proud of yourself this morning?
Yes.
Oh, he's proud of himself this morning, Stephen A. We'll move on. On the show today, we will react, as just mentioned, to Derek Jeter's incredible send-off at Yankee Stadium, and we'll rank the captain among the greatest Yankees of all time. Plus, did you see that Pac-12 matchup last night? Maybe you had a chance to flip back and forth. UCLA and Arizona State. Go Bruins. They looked very impressive, so impressive. That leads us to ask this question. We need you to name your top 4 college teams as of now. Robert Smith will join the desk and help us do that. First topic, though, it was a long night for Washington, more specifically for their starting quarterback, Kirk Cousins. He had 4 interceptions, one touchdown, and the 45-14 loss. Eli Manning looked like the Eli of old, 2 Super Bowls. He had 5 total touchdowns, 4 passing, and 1 of which he ran in. Washington looked lost as Kirk Cousins tried to find his way.
I was trying to get everything back in one play, and you can't do that. That's not the way it's going to come back. So I was starting to force things and trying to do too much, and I just didn't stay true to my reads and stay patient. So, I'm going to learn from it, but not a good outing tonight.
Definitely not a good outing tonight. Stephen A., you said you were upset about what you had to witness in the nation's capital. What did you learn from what you witnessed in the nation's capital?
Well, we learned 2 things, Skip Bayless. Number 1, there is no quarterback controversy in the nation's capital. This is RG3's team, which brings me to point number 2. Kirk Cousins, say this for him. He's no liar. I can tell you that much. He sat there and he continuously told us he's a backup quarterback. He continuously told us this is RG3's team. He's continuously told us he's just here trying to hold down the fort until he's ready to hand back the reins. And we thought that he was just being PC, just politically correct, making sure that he didn't ruffle any feathers or give it or provide any kind of headline or bulletin board material, when in actuality, Kirk Cousins should be applauded for being one of the most honest people we have seen in American history when it comes to a football player, because he did not lie one bit. He was god awful. I can't put into words how epically bad he was. 4 interceptions, 3 interceptions in the 3rd quarter. Skip Bayless, I don't know if I've ever seen that before, to be quite honest with you. I know they've got some stats going back to the 70s or whatever. I don't know if I've ever seen that, okay? He was just that awful. You had giant defenders literally sitting there waiting for his passes to come to them as if they were receivers. And then on top of it all, half the time, the receivers didn't even have their heads turned. They weren't even running the wrong route. He was just letting go of the ball prematurely. He was overthrowing. He was underthrowing. And most of the time, he was throwing it to the opposite team. And more importantly than anything else, Skip Bayless, look at his body language. The guy had his head down all the time, looked depressed. Players were scattering away from him like they were cockroaches running to some other piece of food or whatever the case may be. Any place where Kirk Cousins wasn't, that's where they were going. They almost wanted nothing to do with him, and I can't say that I blamed them. He was awful. And I know that it's just one game, but the epic fashion in which he lost, the way that he performed last night, it was just so bad, it's hard to put into words. He's one of those guys that, you know what, when things are going relatively decent, he's good to go. But when you put him in any kind of hole, and they put him in a hole by forcing a turnover, forcing him to fumble inside his own 30-yard line to lead to the Giants' first score, when that happened, from that moment on, he folded like a cheap tent. He wasn't alone. Please don't get me wrong. Haslett needs to be worried about his job. They're just awful on defense. There's no question about that. You look at some of the things that they do. With Donald, the tight end, with his 3 touchdown having self, by the way, 3 touchdowns by a tight end. Was that first time since 1962? It's just unbelievable. But how is it that you have him on the right side, Skip, and you've got some dude 5'8" on him, and he's about 6'6"? I just don't understand that. I don't know what Haslett was thinking. In the end, I just look at it. This team got penalties on extra points, okay? They couldn't do anything right. And it's just a bad team right now. Gruden looks bad. Haslett looks even worse. But nobody, I repeat, nobody looked worse than Kirk Cousins. And oh, by the way, when you really, really look at it, Pierre Garçon, okay, and Halou Jr., and I forgot who else. They combined for 5 tackles. Skip Bayless, they're on offense, but they had 5 tackles. I mean, it's just horrible. Just horrible. It really was that bad. Just was.
So, what do you want me to say?
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Get out of here.
I guess I could say, maybe Robert Griffin III has a job waiting for him when he returns after all. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll actually get his job back. I don't know. And maybe we'll have to wait another 10 days or so for the Kirk Cousins era to officially begin, because I don't think it started last night, because I never thought it had started before. And it did get so bad late in that game, I waited for the home team to take Cousins out of the game and put their aunts and their uncles in. That's how bad he was. Just put your aunts and uncles in for your cousins, right? Because that's all you got. It was that bad. Am I right? Was it not? He described it for you. He's throwing balls to the other teams. Just put your aunts and uncles in Washington, because that's all you got.
That's not.
But it's true. That's how bad that game was. Okay. Back to serious business here.
Okay. That was funny. That was funny, boy. That was a good one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was off the top of my head. Okay. I tried, because I love you so much. I tried to warn you yesterday. You should have been true blue. You should have picked your Giants, because they were really impressive against a Houston team that had been impressive in its first 2 games. I know Ryan Fitzpatrick turned back into Ryan Fitzpatrick. But without D'Angelo Hall in that Redskins secondary, I figured Eli just might eat him up, and did he ever? That was pretty good Eli.
Yeah.
That was pretty great Eli last night. And I have tried to tell you several times, I think your Giants defense is, dare I say, underrated. And last night they did not have Beeson, and then they lost DRC fairly early in that game.
They did.
And they're still pretty good. They got a little heat on Cousins, and even when they didn't, they cover pretty well. I think it's a pretty good defense that doesn't get enough adulation. So, in the end, I'm going to say it again. I've said this from the start. Kirk Cousins is not a starting quarterback in the National Football League. God help us. He is definitely not a franchise quarterback. And I also tried to warn you that last year he got his 3 starts at the end of the year, and he was not very good. Against Philly, he threw a lot of pretty passes in the first 3 quarters, but when it was money time, when it was time to go win the game, was it 27-all going to the 4th quarter? Again, QBR, scale of 0 to 100. Kirk Cousins in the 4th quarter had a 12. Nick Foles rose, Kirk Cousins fell. That was the story of that game, which was a big shootout and a big NFC East. It was a deciding kind of early season game in the NFC East, and the Redskins went south and the Eagles went north. So, in the end, is it time for the Colt McCoy era? I don't know, but Kirk Cousins he's a solid backup, because he's a nice young man who says all the right things. But as you so ably noted, the things he was saying were just honest. Like, I think in his heart of hearts, he does believe it's Robert's team. I'm just here trying to keep the seat warm, and hopefully we'll win a few games in his absence, and then I will hand the reins back to the man who deserves to have the reins in his hands.
He was honest, Skip. He was honest and straightforward, and we might as well call him Honest Abe. He didn't lie one bit.
No.
Okay? And he basically said, you know what, I'm not on RG3's level. That's basically what he said. He was telling us, people like me wasn't willing to listen, but so much, pretty much because RG3 is not healthy. I don't care what anybody says. That's the issue for me. to me, what RG3 has proven time and time again is that at his best, he's better than Kirk Cousins. And when he's at his worst, he still ain't as bad as Kirk Cousins. It's simply that simple. And that's the way I look at it right now. And when you look at it and you combine that with the fact that his demeanor, his body language just has defeatist all over it. You just look at Kirk Cousins and says, okay, this is what you're going to be. You are a backup quarterback. You are somebody that is looked upon to come in there and spell for somebody else when things ain't going well, whether it's due to injury or somebody else. But in terms of being handed the keys to a franchise, you are not that dude. I know it's just one game, but he is not that dude. And I want to say this too, Skip. I'm not letting Jay Gruden off the hook.
Yep.
I know it's just 4 games into his era as a head coach, and I get that. And I understand that his pedigree is pretty spectacular. But I got to tell you something right now. I've seen coaches that have come in and have taken over jobs, and their first 4 games on the job, their teams have looked better than this. I mean,
true.
when you look
That's
at the
fair.
personnel, you got a Rackbo and Kerrigan back. You acquired Hatcher, and then you leave Haslett in there. There is no reason on God's green earth why your defense should look this lost, especially when you have an experienced veteran like Ryan Clark back there who's been around for quite some time and knows how to play this game. They don't seem to know what they're doing. Victor Cruz caught a 29-yard pass right near the end of the first half to put the Giants in position to kick a field goal when everybody and their grandma knew they were trying to get in position. You're thinking a 7-yard dip or dunk or whatever the case may be. This dude connected on a 29-yard pass to Victor Cruz, and Victor Cruz backpedaled out of bounds like he was about to moonwalk or something. I mean, what the hell is going on here? It's bad in the nation's capital.
Okay, so
it really is. There's a lot of ineptitude all over the place.
What did you learn?
Back to Kerry's original question. What did I learn?
Yes.
That the NFC East this year is still completely up for grabs. I think the Cowboys are going to win it.
Boy.
We'll talk about them, and we're going to talk about the Eagles in just a little bit here.
All right.
I'm hanging in there.
I know. Do you want to give everyone the rundown of the show or no?
Well, I'm teasing. I'm just trying
letting
to
them know what we have coming up. All right. Well, listen, as mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show, it was a good night for the New York sports team.
Kerry,
Yes.
Kerry, why are you asking that question? Do you want to sit and Skip seat? Let Skip host?
Yeah.
And you debate.
Let's do it.
You can do that.
Go here. You're prettier than me. Go ahead. Have at it.
No, we're about to talk about Derek Jeter.
No, he ain't doing that. I was joking there. I was joking.
The best idea for this show.
All right. Coming up next, a fitting
we wouldn't do that to you.
We
wouldn't do that.
I can take it. Yankees beat the Orioles 6-5 on Jeter's walk-off single. And take a look at what happened last night.
The pitch to Jeter. Swing and a line drive. Base hit right field. Richardson around third. Safe. This is unbelievable. Has won it in his final home game as a Yankee. Amazing. This is unreal. I mean, it's like something out of a movie.
I was almost thinking to myself, Joe, get me out of here before I do something that costs us this game. But it's funny how things change, I guess. I've only played shortstop my entire career, and the last time I want to play was tonight.
A New York Post sums it up with this headline: Too perfect. It was a special night. It was a special night. Too perfect. All right, back out live, guys. Let's talk about this. Very emotional night. It was weird almost to see the captain say farewell, but obviously fitting. Skip Bayless, your thoughts?
Stephen A. Smith, I know how big a Derek Jeter fan you are. I'm not a Yankee fan, as you well know. I got goosebumps watching this unfold during and after the game. I couldn't stop watching Derek's post-game press conference because it was the first time in 20 years as a Yankee he had actually opened up, dropped his guard, let down his hair, opened his heart, and showed it to everyone who was watching the post-game press conference. But this is a man, as we spoke of yesterday, who has always had very good talent but not great talent, but who has always found himself in huge New York Yankee moments in which he has willed himself into all-time greatness. See last night. It had to end this way. But what I couldn't get out of my head was it was almost like, as we just heard in the clip we heard, it was almost like it was scripted and the two teams had rehearsed the whole scenario, because it was so preposterous that it made you almost laugh in the end how it unfolded. Remember, Derek Jeter goes to the plate for his first at-bat, and he said later he was so messed up emotionally, he forgot to wear his leg guard, his shin guard. And what does he do? He promptly hits the ball off the left field fence for a double. And then later in the game, comes up, broken bat dribbler to J.J. Hardy at shortstop, who has won the last 2 Gold Gloves. And J.J. Hardy throws it away. And Derek Jeter once again triumphs because 2 runs score off a dribbler to shortstop. And then what happens? It's the top of the 9th, and David Robertson, who has the 3rd most saves in the American League, is in to close it out. And what happens? He blows the save. It's impossible. He gives up not 1, he gives up 2 home runs, a 2-run shot and a solo. And the bottom of the 9th wouldn't have happened unless David Robertson coughs up the lead, and he did. 5-2 becomes 5-5. And then the bottom of the 9th happened. As you know, a walk, a sac bunt, and Derek Jeter walks to the plate, and you just knew what was coming. And it's the first pitch, and it's the same swing we've seen 1,000 times. He inside-outs it to right field. Right field, it had to be to right field. And it's not just a walk-off single, it's a walk into the sunset single. For Derek Jeter, it's impossible. I loved it. I will never forget it. I thank Derek Jeter for it. Yet my favorite quote of the night was, he said, "People keep thanking me for what I did." And he said, "Why are you thanking me? I just did my job." Well, didn't that pretty much sum up this man? As did last night. Go.
It was special, man. You know how I feel about El Capitan. There is no doubt about that. It gave me goosebumps as well. It was just phenomenal to see. I mean, when he hit the first hit I thought was a homer. I thought that was going over the wall. That was the only hiccup as far as I'm concerned, because as the ball was in flight, you thought it was going over the wall, and that this dude was gonna, end this night, or start off the game his at bat with a home run. And you just saw the people in attendance, you saw his family there, you saw friends and loved ones there. Practically everybody was a loved one last night, because anybody that knows anything about Derek Jeter, the baseball player and the professional, you can do nothing but appreciate the level of greatness, the level of professionalism. I mean, I just can't say enough about what he's meant to me as a diehard Yankee fan, all my life. This guy is absolutely phenomenal, and he personifies and exemplifies everything that's great about baseball, everything that's great about a professional athlete. He delivers. And last night, to hit that single, to bring home the winning run, it was just apropos. And did you remember, Skip, I shouldn't say almost, it was destiny. Because this game was supposed to be rained out.
Yeah.
This game was supposed to be torrential rains, and everybody was talking about how the game would not be made up unless somehow, some way, it would influence the Baltimore Orioles in terms of, the playoff picture and what have you, where they would play, or et cetera. And I'm just looking at Derek Jeter, and I'm saying, look, before the game, I was almost tempted to say it, but I didn't, Skip. I was like, it's not going to rain. It's not going to stop the game. It's Derek Jeter's night. There is no way, you understand, that Mother Nature's going to kick in and ruin this night. It's just not going to happen. And sure enough, it didn't happen. It was just something special, man. But when it comes to Derek Jeter, can we legitimately say that we're surprised? We're not, because this guy responds and he delivers when called upon most. And the moment that existed last night, which was his moment, his night, his final night in Yankee pinstripes at Yankee Stadium, is just nothing that was going to mess that up. And I just can't say enough about it. He is one of the greatest to have ever played, as far as I'm concerned, and he's my all-time favorite as a professional athlete. If I wanted to be like somebody, it would be to be like him. Just certain things you simply can't do.
Yep.
Perfection doesn't come along very often, but he's as close to perfection as it gets as a professional athlete.
Well said. Final note. Derek Jeter said after the game, "I won't play shortstop in the 3 games in Boston." And he said, "I hope the Red Sox are okay with this," which they will be.
We played that. Yeah, we played that clip. He did. It was really nice.
And it was cool to hear that. And I don't think anybody will have a problem with that, because he just wanted to remember the view from shortstop at Yankee Stadium. And with him crouching down out at shortstop in front of the world and saying his pregame prayer one last time, it was really something to watch.
Eagles 49ers are polar opposites this season. The Eagles start slow and finish fast, while the 49ers are unable to do anything in the second half. The Eagles are the first team in NFL history to start a season 3-0 while overcoming a double-digit deficit in each game. The 49ers have scored 3 points in the second half, the fewest in the NFL this season. The last time a team was held to a total of 3 or fewer points in the second half of the first 3 games of a season was in 2009 with the Rams, who went on to finish 1-15 that season. So here's a question: who wins? Skip, do you want to take it, or you want to give it to Stephen A? Stephen A, who wins?
You know, Skip Bayless, I'm tempted to pick the Eagles because I simply believe that the Eagles are a better team this year, but considering the level of desperation associated with the San Francisco 49ers, how they're up against it right now, I'm going to go with the San Francisco 49ers to win this football game. I think Kaepernick, who's completing about 70% of his passes, although he hasn't been knocking your socks off, just 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions on the season, he's had to scramble 26 times this year and run the football because obviously the protection that he's accustomed to getting hasn't necessarily been there, at least with the degree of consistency that he would like. Frank Gore's only got about 35 rushes over the first 3 games. You would think he would need to run the football more. But I look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Skip, do you know that they haven't had a sack since game 1? They recorded 3 sacks in their season opener against Jacksonville, and from that moment forward, they haven't had a sack since, although they've had 15 hurries. They're not putting immense pressure on the quarterback. Now, the Eagles pride themselves. They're saying that those statistics are a misnomer. Pay no attention to it, because really it's not about the sacks that you get. It's about whether or not you have the ability to force a quarterback out of his comfort zone, out of the pocket and what have you, because that's what they focus on. The problem with that is that's exactly what you shouldn't want to do with Colin Kaepernick. You should want to keep him insulated. You shouldn't want him to be evasive and scramble out of the pocket and be on the run, because to me that's where he's most lethal as far as I'm concerned. And I think that with the 49ers having their backs up against the wall, I think their defense, albeit not stout compared to what we're accustomed to seeing, I think they're going to make some noise on their home turf this week, even though I don't consider their home turf much of home turf. I think Colin Kaepernick and those boys will understand that their backs are against the wall and they've got to step up. And as a result, I think they'll find a way to pull out this game, something along the lines of 30-27. That's what I believe.
I sure hope you're right about that. I fear you are wrong about your prediction. And I fear it because, you know me, I picked Dallas to win the East, so I need Philly. I want Philly to lose this game at San Francisco. In fact, before the year, I circled this game and said, that's one that the Eagles will lose. And then all of a sudden, we have Jekyll Hyde versus Hyde Jekyll. And I can't figure out either team quite yet. I'm trying to make a case for Philly to win this game because I just watched Philly's defense give up 511 yards to Kirk Cousins and company on their home field in Philadelphia. That means that the Eagles' defense has now given up the 24th most yards in the NFL and the 24th most points in the NFL. Not very good. So, I look at the point spread, and it opened at San Francisco minus 6 points at home, and I thought that was so high, and so did the public, and everybody jumped on it because everybody thinks Philly, 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 and bet it all the way down to 4.5, which is a pretty significant drop in that number. And finally, this morning, Stephen A., I'm thinking about it, and it just, the light went on in my head, and I thought, you know what? Something is wrong with the 49ers. Something is really wrong with the 49ers at home in their new digs, Levi. These Levi's don't seem to fit them very well. I don't know why. What's that?
I said it's not a home crowd.
It's not a home
as far as I'm concerned at all. But I got to admit, these one-liners that you've come up with today are fantastic. You are on a roll, Skip Bayless. And Levi's don't fit them. You know, I mean,
well,
it's beautiful, Skip. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Keep it coming. I'm so proud of you. I'm going to keep it coming with a prediction that I so hope I'm wrong about.
I think the Eagles are going to win this game because I think the Eagles will win the second half like they always do. I'm afraid of it. I'm going to go Eagles, and I wrote down my score, and it's almost your score except flipped. I got Eagles winning 30-28, and you got 30-27 home team, right?
Yeah, I do. And listen, shoot, I'm certainly not on a roll as of late with some of these daggone games I've been picking. I ain't gonna deny that. But you're trying to hold on to it for the first part of the season before you really get into it. You want to see a body of work. But until you see that body of work, you're basically going on, all right, the 49ers can't be this bad. Well, they can't be this inept. They can't be this lost. But I can't believe that this season is pretty much going to be, I know that, but I can't believe that this season is going to be over by week 4 like the Redskins. Like, for example, do we have any doubt that the Redskins are finished? They got Seattle and Arizona coming up next. I mean, their season is over as far as I'm concerned. But when I look at San Francisco, I'm trying to hold on to it and saying, all right, you're on your home turf. You lost 2 straight. You got to step up and produce. You lose this game, you 1-3. You're in a world of trouble if you're the San Francisco 49ers. And I'm just trying to hold on to this belief that these dudes, even without Aldon Smith, even without him and Bowman, I gotta believe that they're better than this.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but you tell me, which quarterback do you trust more, Nick Foles or Colin Kaepernick, as we stand today, from what you've seen so far?
As we stand today, it's Nick Foles.
Yeah.
As we stand today, absolutely. But it's not. But it's not fair to Kaepernick from this perspective. The Crabtrees of the world, Stevie Johnson. Look, this guy's no scrub. He's a guy that had 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons in Buffalo before he nosedived a little bit last year, and then now he's in San Francisco. So you got a Stevie Johnson, you've got an Anquan Bolden, you've got a Vernon Davis. There's simply no excuse for these guys to not step up and answer the bell. They've been around long enough. They're tried, true, and tested. There's no reason for the San Francisco 49ers to have looked as bad as they've looked over the last 2 games or so. I mean, they've got to address it, and I think they've got that pride inside of them to do it. If it was Seattle, that's different because Seattle can punk a lot of people with that defense that they have. But I don't see the Eagles as being that way. I see the Eagles trying to beat you with offensive firepower, and I think San Francisco's defense has the personnel and the pride to respond to that challenge. And as a result, I think the offense will be able to step it up because I don't think the Eagles' defense is that formidable. They're good. They're not scrubs. But I don't think they're as formidable as some of the elite defensive teams in the NFL, and that's why I give San Francisco a chance in this game, despite how they've looked.
Eagles at 49ers Sunday, 4:25 Eastern. Skip has it 30-28 Eagles. Stephen A says 30-27 home team. Number 11 UCLA defeated number 15 Arizona State 62-27. A 35-point pounding in Arizona. The only other team in the last 3 seasons to beat a top 15 team on the road by at least 35 was Florida State, who beat number 3 Clemson last season 51-14. You may remember that game. Florida State went undefeated and won the national championship. Perhaps that's just an omen. UCLA may win the national championship. Take a look at this top 10. It's the AP's top 10. Florida State number 1 and Oregon number 2, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Auburn rounding out the top 5. Robert Smith, also our Oracle, our college analyst, joins us now at the desk. So
You're very excited about UCLA, aren't you?
I'm not biased at all. I was just saying, because that was just
you mean the UCLA that stunk it up all year?
Yeah, and they have one decent win, and I'm all like, this is it. We won the championship. Okay, so Robert, look, it's time. You got to make your pick. Right now, as of now, who do you have in your college football playoff?
Well, first of all, I think people need to be really careful, and this is why the College Football Playoff Committee isn't even releasing their first standings until the end of October, because we open up the segment saying number 11 UCLA beats number 15 Arizona State. Yeah. Arizona State had played Weber State, they had played New Mexico, and they had played Colorado. Okay. So be very careful with that stuff. But on to where I am right now. Skip, I know you're not going to like this, but I have Oklahoma number 1 right now.
Number 1?
I have them number 1 right now.
Oh, wow.
Yikes.
Yes. I think offensively, offensively, people were wondering coming into the season, is Trevor Knight going to be the guy that we saw in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama, or is he going to be the guy that we saw through most of the season, even though he was banged up last season? I am a believer in Oklahoma. I'm a little bit concerned about the defense, but that was on the road, hostile environment at West Virginia, gave up 513 yards. At number 2, I have Alabama, who also played that same West Virginia team in the opener. Didn't do a great job stopping the pass in that game, gave up almost 400 yards passing, but really didn't give up a lot on the ground. I have Oregon, number 3, and I have Florida State, number 4 right now. Concerns for all of these teams. Florida State's nowhere near the same team that they were last year, but when I look at the schedule, I think that they're going to make it into the playoff. And quite frankly, if any of these teams lose a game, just one game, I still see them being able to make the playoff over a one-loss Michigan State. I really don't see a scenario where the Big Ten gets in.
All right, Stephen A.
What are you doing to me? You're the oracle. I mean, you're supposed to be guiding me here, Robert. I don't even have Oklahoma in my top 4. I got to tell you, I got to tell you, I'm not a believer in Trevor Knight yet. 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, complete just 58% of his passes thus far. I'm looking at their schedule. West Virginia, you're right, you gave up 33 points to them. Their defense, I didn't like that. Louisiana Tech, Tulsa, I'm not getting caught up in that. I love what I saw Oregon do to Michigan State. That's why I got them at number 1. I'm looking at the Florida State Seminoles. They're the national champions. You beat Clemson. You beat Oklahoma State. I'm going to give you some props for that, especially since you did it without Jameis Winston the last game. I'm going to give you props for that. And, of course, Roll Tide. Did you see Amari Cooper last week? Of course I'm going to go with Alabama up in that mix. And then I look at Texas A&M, man. I know their schedule is suspect. It ain't a big deal. SMU, Rice, Lamar, but I can't get over what I saw them do to South Carolina. I'm seeing this guy, Kenny Hill, complete nearly 70% of his passes, 13 touchdowns, just 1 interception. You look at Trey Williams, you look at Malcolm Kennedy, you look at Josh Reynolds. I got to tell you, I'm looking at Oregon, Florida State, Alabama, and I'm going to give Texas A&M some love here. I'm not sold on Trevor Knight at Oklahoma yet. I'm just not. I'm sorry to Oracle. I listen to you. I'm usually agreeing with you. But I am shocked that you got Oklahoma so high. I'm flabbergasted to that, man. I really am.
Well, first of all, on 2 SEC teams, let's remember there are 4 playoff spots. There are 5 power conferences. So you're assuming that there's going to be 2 of those power conferences that are going to get left out. Obviously, you're looking at the Big 12 in that scenario, and you're saying that they're going to be left out. I believe Oklahoma or Baylor will go undefeated. Remember, these guys don't have to play a Big 12 championship game. I don't think 2 SEC teams get in.
No, hold on, Robert. I apologize. That's not what I'm not talking about. That I do understand, and I feel you on that. I'm just talking about as of right now.
Okay.
The question is in terms of your top 4 teams. That's all I'm talking about. I totally agree with you on that stuff. But I'm just saying when I'm listening to the Oracle and you tell me the top 4 teams in the nation, that's all I'm thinking about. And I'm like, really? Texas A&M is not in there?
Well, yeah, I was answering a different question because I was asked to project where I thought the playoff.
Okay.
Oh, you mean you're projecting who's going to finish?
Yes.
Top
My bad.
4.
Yeah.
That's what I was told the question was as
No,
well.
I was not told that.
That's what the producer told me.
That's what the producer told me and
That's
probably
what
told
the
you guys. So you
producer
guys just
told
do what you want.
I specifically asked.
Okay.
I specifically
My bad.
asked. No, it's our bad.
Yes, a
because I was
collective
told
bad.
it's from what you've seen to date.
Okay.
To date. Would that change what you think?
Right.
Oh, yeah, it
That's
would
all I
change
was
what I
going
think
by.
right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
How dramatically?
I think A&M would probably be in there as well.
Okay.
But as far as the rest of it, I think Oklahoma goes undefeated.
They have a shot.
I believe that they do.
But the question's
I believe
going to
that they do.
become, would an undefeated Oklahoma make it into the Final Four? That's going to be the question. Come on,
It's not even.
Come on.
It's not even. I know what you're trying to do.
No, I'm not trying to do anything.
I know what you're trying to do.
I'm trying to be
You're
the
oracle here.
You're trying
You're trying not to jinx your team. That's what you're trying to do.
There might be a little bit of that, but maybe I'm too close to my
That's
team
true,
because
Robert.
I feel like you're not close enough. Okay, let me now put up my 4 that were ranked from what I've seen to date. Okay? I'm not backing off Florida State because they've had such upheaval with Jameis' situation. I think he will now start turning back into at least a Heisman candidate from this point forward, and I still have them number 1. I obviously have Alabama number 2. I have Kenny Trill and company, A&M number 3. And I got Mississippi State, from what I've seen so far, at number 4. Because they went into Death Valley last Saturday night against a team that I projected into my final for the preseason against LSU and destroyed LSU. They ran for 302 yards. Dak Prescott, Josh Robinson. Dan Mullen has the most experienced team in college football, hands down. You agree?
I do, and I picked them going against LSU last week as well. But this is the thing. You're doing what we are trying to avoid in this system. You're anchoring in a different way. You're anchoring on your own projections about what LSU was going to be. Don't forget what LSU did week 1 against Wisconsin.
They're loaded with talent.
This is not the same LSU team. First of all, at quarterback, it's just not happening right now. Anthony Jennings.
I thought he played well in the second half against Wisconsin.
Well, he did, but clearly against Mississippi State, they didn't get what they needed to get, and they had to get because Mississippi State was so good stopping the run. Brandon Harris, people are saying that he may be the guy. He looked terrible against Wisconsin.
Okay.
You can't say that Mississippi State belongs there because you had LSU in your top 4 because you're doing what you tell them not to do.
Point of order. 1 year ago, about right now on the show, I started saying, everybody look out for Auburn. They're coming. And I kept telling my man, Stephen A. Smith, Auburn just might win out. And he's laughing at me. He's laughing at me. And it took one of the most phenomenal, crazy plays in the history of college football.
Two of those
plays. One in Georgia.
One in Georgia as well.
You're right. Okay. But they did. They did. They won out, and they should have won the national championship game. But that's a whole other story. I think Mississippi State, from what I'm seeing so far, is last year's Auburn this year. I think they have a chance. They look at their schedule. It's stacked at home, except they have to go to Alabama. They just have to go. And Alabama has had a recent history of blowing home games to Texas A&M and Auburn. Am I right?
Yeah, no question. But it's a different.
Watch your tongue. You watch your tongue. Don't you talk about the time like that.
I'm just speaking historically.
Let me ask you this, Robert. Let me go back to what. Let me go back to what you said about Oklahoma. Robert, I got Oklahoma's schedule right in front of me, man. Got to ask you this question, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Even if they go undefeated, because I'm looking at this TCU.
At TCU is going to be tough.
Kansas State, Iowa State.
Baylor at home.
All right, Baylor, Texas Tech, Kansas, Oklahoma State. Is that a worthy enough schedule for you to legitimately look at them, even if they are undefeated?
Very good question. Stephen A. Oracle.
Is that a word?
Yes, it is, number 1.
That's what I'm getting, Robert.
Yes, it is, number 1. And number 2, let's not forget that the College Football Playoff Committee, the point of emphasis is going to be on conference champions. Not just because of what Mark D'Antonio said, but because they feel that conference champions should be in there. And if you think that an undefeated Big 12 champion, even without a Big 12 championship game, isn't making it into the playoffs,
you're wrong.
You're dead flat out wrong.
No, I'm not questioning that, Robert, stay with me. Stay with me, Robert. I'm not questioning that you're right about that. Please don't get me wrong. I am asking the Oracle, do you feel that should be the case?
I do.
If somebody goes undefeated, okay.
Well, first of all, that's
what I wanted to know from you because I'm looking at the schedule.
Let's look at at powerhouse from the SEC West, Auburn, and what they did against Kansas State last week.
They should have lost the game.
They absolutely should have lost that game.
The kicker missed 3 field goals?
Unbelievable. But Kansas State, the performance by Kansas State, replacing all, they had 11 starters back from that team.
Highly impressive.
Very impressive.
But they have to play at Oklahoma.
Well, they have to play there, but we can't just say, well, Kansas State, we're going to dismiss them. We can't dismiss what Oklahoma did in the bowl game against Alabama a year. We can't dismiss all of that. We can't just say, okay, well, the Big 12, they're not that. Why aren't they that good? Who's saying that?
Yeah.
I'm saying that.
You're going to do everything you can.
Time out. We're going to discuss that in just one moment. But I have one huge bone to pick with you and maybe you also.
Okay.
the Pac-12 this year to me is the Pac 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I'm sorry, they don't stack up either. I'm looking at Oregon. You are stuck on Oregon. You love the quarterback. I'm fine with that. I respect that. But I'm looking at what has just happened, what my eyes have shown me. And at home against Michigan State, they trailed 27-18 in the third quarter. And they were lights out after that. I give you that. But they're often lights out in that stadium, in that city, right? Okay. Then I look at last week at Wazoo, at Washington State. It's 21-all at halftime, and Mariota goes down for the game 7 times. He gets sacked. And the defense allows 436 pass yards to Connor Holiday, who's pretty good, but is he that good? 4 touchdowns, no interception? Are you sure that's a top 4 team that we're looking at?
Yeah, I do. And first of all, let's talk about that offensive line a little bit. They've had some injuries along that offensive line, and I almost put Stanford, quite frankly, into my playoff. Because of and I know that they have the loss to USC, excuse me, but looking at the rest of their schedule and what they have an opportunity to do, I'm looking at what they've done against Oregon in the last couple of years, and I'm thinking that they might have a chance to do that again if it weren't for the fact that Oregon will more than likely have those offensive linemen back by that point. The defense for Oregon, that's a big concern for me, a big concern. But I am telling you right now, even with one loss, let's remember who they already beat. They already beat Michigan State, and they were down in that game, but they came back and won that game. If Oregon has one loss, they will be in the playoff.
Go ahead, Stephen A.
Well, Robert, one other quick question, Robert. I want to know how much your rankings, I'm not talking about who you think's going to make the playoffs, just in terms of your personal rankings, how much will you be influenced by Mississippi State's upcoming game? They're hosting Texas A&M. I mean, based on what Skip just said about Mississippi State, and you concurred to some degree, considering what we've just been talking about, Skip and I both have Texas A&M in our top 4. What if, how much is this weekend's game with those two teams? How much could that influence you? What if Texas A&M rolls over Mississippi State? What are your feelings going to be then?
Well, I believe they have Arkansas. Yeah, they have. Well, I'm very. Well, first of all, when I said first of all, let me clear something up about Oregon. That's one loss if they become conference champion, of course. But I'm very curious to see how Texas A&M looks defensively. Against Arkansas.
Well, they're going to have a hard time stopping the run.
Yeah, and I was impressed by the way that the defense looked in the opener against South Carolina. But remember, you had some true freshmen on that defense. Mark Snyder is a great defensive coordinator. They haven't had the tools. They haven't had an SEC personnel. They are starting to get the SEC athletes. I don't know that they have the SEC experience, though. I don't know that those guys can do that an entire season, and this is going to be a very serious test. But I'm not. I have absolutely no problem. I'm not real happy about it, but I have no problem admitting I'm wrong at any point during the season. And I am not going to dismiss Mississippi State. They have as much potential to get into that mix as anybody. But I think it's a fluid situation. We need to treat it that way. We need to forget about what we believed the week before.
Guys, I apologize. The next game on Mississippi State's schedule is Texas A&M. It just said October 4th. I missed that.
You're okay. You're okay. So back to your number 1 team. Right. I was born and raised an Oklahoma fan, as you know. I'm not sold on Trevor Knight. He had a sensational, all-time great Sugar Bowl against Nick Saban's group, but I think they had pretty much gone home for the holidays. That's what it felt like to me. And he is still wildly erratic to me. But they did discover a pure freshman running back at West Virginia, Samaje Perine, who ran for 242, and I just read this morning in USA Today, he has bench pressed 275, not 225, 275 30 times. So this is a strong young man. But is their defense enough? Is West Virginia's defense enough to rank it, where they had just given up 37 to Maryland? So was that all that impressive, what just happened? I don't know. I'm not sure their schedule is that impressive.
Well, you know what's funny to me, Mississippi State might be. They might have the best defense out of all of these teams.
I agree.
I don't think any of my top 4 teams. I mean, Alabama has shown more problems in the secondary. The run defense has still been stout. Florida State is not the same defense that we've seen. Oklahoma's had their troubles, and clearly Oregon's had their troubles as well. All of these teams. So for all of this talk about defense wins championships, it might be a mediocre average, maybe slightly above average defense, 4 of them that make it into the playoff, in my mind.
Okay. Wait, I just put Mississippi State. I'm going to put them on top of my rankings.
Okay, number
That's
one.
what you just said.
Number
Why
one.
not?
I didn't say that.
Why not? And you're saying
Wouldn't go that far.
You're going to save some time because you said you don't mind if you were wrong. So you'll say UCLA a little later on.
I may say that.
Okay.
I may say that. Hey, if they show it, I'll say it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Do you think if you guys had not lost to San Antonio in 5 games in the NBA Finals, you might still be in Miami?
I mean, it's a greater chance for sure. I mean, it would be hard to to leave back-to-back championships, you know, and try to go for 4. But obviously, you really can't live and think of what may have happened. You just kind of, for me, I've always been a person kind of live in the moment.
That was an excerpt from LeBron James's interview Unguarded with Rachel Nichols on CNN. It airs 10:30 Eastern on Friday. So LeBron says he would have considered staying if the Heat beat the Spurs. It would have been hard to leave. You just heard him say that. Here's the question, though. Stephen A., do you believe that?
No, I do not. But I'm not knocking LeBron James for that. I mean, he's entitled to say what he has to say, and he's going to make sure that he dots his I's and crosses his T's. The fact of the matter is, Skip Bayless, the summer of 2013, I sat right across from you on First Take and told you that I was hearing that he was strongly considering leaving Miami for Cleveland at that particular moment in time. And so if that kind of stuff gets out and it circulates, and then you know anything about LeBron and you take all the other ancillary things into consideration, his boys not necessarily being treated with the level of affection and welcoming that he would have preferred, along with him not being able to exercise a degree of control and prowess and cachet that he had when he was in Cleveland. Family and friends really wishing that they were back on their home turf. And then you look at what he's doing from a business perspective. LeBron James is not just a player. He's the de facto general manager and soon to be part owner for the Cleveland Cavaliers as far as I'm concerned. If you look at the level of prowess that he's exercising right now, they're not making any decisions that LeBron James doesn't approve of. His friends and family members will be treated significantly more closely than they were in Miami. And that's not to say he was mistreated by any stretch of the imagination, because the Miami Heat are a first-class organization led by Mickey Harrison and Pat Riley. You know how I feel about them. But Pat Riley is old school. There's not going to be anybody running the show in South Beach other than Pat Riley. That's just the way it's going to be as long as he's there. So he will sit there and talk with you. He will challenge you. He will be fair to you. But he's not going to kiss anybody's tush. That's not how Pat Riley rolls. He doesn't do that. Dan Gilbert clearly doesn't have that problem, because look at what he did to get LeBron James to even consider coming back. Took that letter, that scathing letter he wrote in the aftermath of LeBron James' immediate departure from Cleveland, left it up there on their website all of those years, took it down right before LeBron announced his decision, met with LeBron James, talked face-to-face, man-to-man, apologized to LeBron James, stuff like that. Pat Riley's not that kind of dude. Pat Riley's not going to put himself in a position where he comes across as classless as Dan Gilbert, in fairness to him. But Pat Riley runs the show. In Cleveland, LeBron is running the show. LeBron always knew that that could potentially be the case if he elected to go back, which is why you were hearing rumors about him coming back. Make no mistake, I don't care who it is, Rich Paul, Randy, Maverick, Adam Medelson, all of these guys that equate to LeBron James in a circle. They are incredibly gifted and calculating at what they do. They don't make spontaneous and impromptu maneuvers. They plan, they calculate, they gauge and purview the landscape. They know exactly what they're doing. So this notion that, oh, if we win 3 straight, I'll stay in South Beach. I found it hard to believe that LeBron James was ever going to leave South Beach, because you know me and South Beach. South Beach, Cleveland, what's there to talk about in terms of locale? But when you think about what he has and what he ultimately said he wanted, LeBron James didn't just figure that out in June or May or April. He knew that long before that. Period.
So you're going at this as if win, lose, or draw in last year's NBA Finals, LeBron was going to Cleveland, correct? That's how you
Yes.
read those tea leaves all along that way. So you think he's being a little disingenuous because... Go ahead.
I don't want to say disingenuous because LeBron is classy, and I don't mean to imply anything remotely negative about it. I'm just simply saying that the man knows what he's going to do, and he knows about it long before anybody knows about it. He ain't making a decision a week ago and then decide that he's going to let the world know a week later. LeBron is the type of dude that he knows a year or months in advance exactly what he's going to do before anybody else knows. That's how he rolls. To express it any other way, no knock against him, but I don't believe it, not for 1 second.
Okay. So you may be dead right about everything you just said. So you're going to have to leave it to me to imply something negative here. You can accuse me of being hypercritical if you want. Okay. I'm just going to tell you my instant read of these quotes when I heard them or read them yesterday. It smacked to me of between the lines, LeBron once again saying, I just didn't have enough help in Miami. I had to seek better and younger talent, and I found it as I was able to go home in Cleveland because we were able to, this is all I'm reading between the lines, because obviously he's going home to Kyrie and, in a shock to me, Kevin Love. So, bully for LeBron. But, Stephen A., it rankles me, it irritates me that LeBron could get away with suggesting that he didn't have enough help. I'm going to point out again, they were the favorite going into the finals against the San Antonio Spurs. And again, LeBron, I think we would agree on this. LeBron James was by far the best player on the court. Like of either team. Of either team, it was LeBron James. So LeBron's team, because of his issues with his cramps in Game 1, obviously lost Game 1. And then, obviously, Spurs win Game 2. Back home in Miami, LeBron James was just oddly, weirdly off in the second half of Game 3 at home. And then in the turning point, the crucial Game 4 in Miami, American Airlines Arena, look it up. LeBron James was weirdly, oddly, inexplicably off in the first half of that game. Both Spurs wins. And then obviously the Spurs were able to go home and clinch it in Game 5 by a record finals margin. It's just, to me, it's still insulting to a degree to Dwayne Wade and everybody else on that team. Ray Allen, Chalmers. I know Chalmers was terrible, but it's an insult to everybody else, Chris Bosh, on that team, that you're suggesting, if you guys had helped me a little bit and we had won, I would have stayed. We could have gone for another one, and great. That's what I'm not buying. That's what I don't like.
Well, I feel you on that, but let me put on my insider hat and just give you this information and see how you respond to it, okay? Because it's a couple of things. One is relatively cynical, and the other is what I find to be incredibly positive. The cynical side is this. LeBron James, along with other players, you have to remember, Skip, you don't know too many people that love Pat Riley and the Miami Heat organization more than me. But Pat Riley runs the show. And so when you've got guys, and Eric Spoelstra is like, it's like Pat Riley gave birth to him, for crying out loud, because they think so much alike. And Eric Spoelstra is the closest thing to a younger version of Pat Riley that I think I've seen. They will work you. You will practice. You got back-to-backs. You got some things going on. You're standing on your feet. You're working. Guys, as they become veterans and they get older, they start looking for different situations, involving more comfort, getting more rest, saving their bodies, things of that nature. Pat Riley believes in pounding that pavement, working. What is Alonzo Mourning? What was he known for? A workaholic. And Pat Riley has never loved a player more than he's loved Alonzo Mourning. So those kind of things, even though we look at the Miami Heat, see first class all the way, it's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea. These are the kind of things you hear from various players, some who are still there, some who are gone. The other thing, and I'll take this to a more positive level, the more I see about what LeBron is doing, you want to criticize him. My admiration for LeBron is growing. And I'm going to tell you why. Because LeBron stopped thinking about basketball. LeBron is not thinking about basketball. LeBron, of course, he plays it and he's trying to win championships, but it's because of not just the rings, it's what else it can do for him. LeBron James wasn't joking when he talked about trying to be a billionaire. Yeah. He's not joking when he talks about power. Think about when Donald Sterling spoke up. Who was the first person as a player to speak out against Donald Sterling and talk about how he had to go? Think about that. Danny Ferry. LeBron and no one calling for Danny Ferry to be gone. But what is LeBron James saying in this interview with Rachel Nichols? What is he pointing out? He's pointing out, hey, there's no place in this game for that. LeBron James is elevating himself to that true ambassador status. Mm-hmm. He is not somebody that's going to be in position to be accused of being silent, going along to get along. No, LeBron is trying to make a difference. And he's willing to use his mouth to do it. He's willing to use his money to do it. It got some stuff, him and Maverick Carter producing a show for the Stars Network. He's obviously going to be more empowered with the Cleveland Browns organization. This brother is a black athlete that is trying to take this whole game to another stratosphere in terms of parlaying your exploits on the court into something far more significant, not just while you're playing, but when it's all over. This is the vision that he has. It's that deep. I'm sure he doesn't like me talking about it. I'm sure he doesn't want anybody talking about it. I'm sure he's trying to roll along clandestinely and figure out a way to operate in the dark until he's ready to shine it all for everybody. But this is what he's been doing. This is what he is about. It is as deep as it gets. I'm trying to tell you right now, that's the kind of mission he's on. It's almost to the point, Skip, where there's no reason to pay attention to LeBron James, the player, except for when he's actually playing. What we need to keep our eyes on is what this brother is doing with his other ventures. Okay. Because it's something special to watch, man.
That's a whole
truly is.
That's a whole nother issue to me. But bottom line to these quotes, I think they will further motivate Dwayne Wade's Miami Heat this year on the basketball court.
Yeah, but it's gonna motivate Dwayne Wade. But that wasn't the biggest reason why he left. He left because there's more power in Cleveland that he wasn't going to get with Pat Riley in Miami.
True. Okay.
LeBron creating a blueprint for what the players could do in the league is what Stephen A. is setting up for us. Media day today for the Cavs. 300 people have asked for credentials.
I commute from Schenectady to Manhattan. It's about a 6-hour round trip. But it's cool. My family loves Schenectady, and I love books on tape. It's a lot of time to spend driving alone. On the other hand, Schenectady is really close to the highway, so...
Life is a long drive. Make sure your car is along for the ride. Mobile Super Motor Oil is formulated to help prevent sludge and protect against wear. Mobile Super, for long engine life.
Throw over the middle, Colston. He breaks the tackle and dives into the end zone. Sproles rolls in from 3 yards out, and the Saints extend their lead. Greaves sets up a little flare out to the right side to Sproles. Sproles takes off, down to the 10, 5, touchdown! Saints 49-17, 40 first downs tonight. That is an NFL record that the Saints have put on this Cowboy defense.
Russell, that was the last time the Saints played the Cowboys in Week 10 of last season. Again, the Saints set an NFL record with 40 first downs and posted a team record of 625 total yards in the 49-17 win. Joining us now at the desk is our NFL analyst, Mark Schlereth. So the question is this. Do the Cowboys get the win this time around?
I mean, it's a tough question. Obviously, we looked at the Dallas Cowboys and we look at the way they're running the ball right now. And they're doing some really good things, and they're covering up for some of the weaknesses on that defensive side of the ball. And I like that. Last week, down 21-0, they faced a couple of 8-man fronts. They had one-on-one on the outside, and they said, forget it. Tony Romo, you're not allowed to check out of this stuff. We're going to learn to run against an 8-man box. That bodes well for the Dallas Cowboys because they ran it at a 14-yard clip. At the very next play, another 8-man box at a 20-yard clip. They know how to run against 8-man fronts, and they're not letting their quarterback check out of those things. That's how they have to play the game. That's the recipe for success in Dallas because it hides some of the deficiencies from a talent standpoint that they have on the defensive side of the ball. But still, I think the Saints come in there. I think they get a victory. They've got some things they have to work on as well, but they haven't been prolific on offense. But I still think they're a work in progress, and they'll figure that out.
All right, Stephen A.
I agree with Slareth. I mean, and it's good to see you, buddy. Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
I'm looking at the Saints. They've lost 5 consecutive road games, 7 of their last 8. That's not very impressive, but I love that because what better way for those doldrums to come to an end than in Big D, where Rob Ryan is returning for the first time since being unceremoniously kicked out of town by Jerry Jones. If there was ever a game that Rob Ryan was going to bring the heat, it's going to be this game. Now, we know that the Saints' pass rush hasn't been that great. Their defense has been relatively suspect as well. We get all of that, but at the same time, Skip Bayless, Mark Schlereth, I'm thinking this would be the perfect opportunity. Tony Romo seemed to be getting stronger after his back surgery, particularly after throwing that pick 6 last night. But at the same time, if you're Gillette, if you're Jordan, you've got to help bring the pressure, apply it to Tony Romo, and I think you can neutralize Dallas to some degree. I think a key in all of this is going to be finding a way to neutralize DeMarco Murray as well, or hoping that the Dallas Cowboys will get caught up in the mix, that they'll be stupid enough not to give the ball to DeMarco Murray. He's rushed for 100 yards or more 3 consecutive games opening this season. Only Emmitt Smith and Tony Dorsett have done that in Cowboys lore. But in the end, I look at it from this perspective, guys. I'm just thinking along the lines that Drew Brees and this offense with Jimmy Graham and these guys, you got to remember the Dallas Cowboys, 27 touchdowns, 290 yards to tight ends thus far this season. What you going to do with Jimmy Graham? We all know this brother can ball. Church might be able, he's going to have his work cut out for him. There's no doubt about it. But I think Jimmy Graham's going to win that matchup. Skandrick's back, so their defense should improve to some degree because you don't have Claiborne in that starting lineup, even though he foolishly thinks he should be starting. But still in all, I just look at New Orleans, and I think that if there was ever a game where they're going to find a way to put up some points, it's going to be this game. I think as a result, Tony Romo will throw the football more than he did last week. I think as a result of that, the New Orleans Saints, led by Rob Ryan, will be applying even more heat somehow, some way. I assume it'll be a high-scoring affair, somewhere along the lines of 37-33. But in the end, what needs to be done should get done, and New Orleans should win this game.
You're going to give my Cowboys 33 points? I'm shocked by that. You really think they can score 33?
Yeah, they're at home. They're at home, and New Orleans' defense isn't that great.
Oh, okay. Well, I love it that you picked against my Cowboys with such relish because you were just like, there's such enthusiasm that spills from your lips because that makes me feel really good. Yeah. I'm happy that my friend Mark also picks New Orleans. I'm here to tell you I'm only going to stand by one thing that I predicted on the show. The Dallas Cowboys are going to win the NFC East. But I have learned my lesson. I'm not going to pick for them or against them. I'm not going to pick these games because I tried it in week 1. I tried to pick Dallas to beat San Francisco at Jerry World on opening Sunday. Remember this? Mm-hmm. And Dallas should have won that game. They did win the second half 14-0, but DeMarco Murray turned into DeFumble Murray, as he has for 3 straight first quarters of games. And Tony Romo throws 3 interceptions in the first half. Well, you're going to lose to the 49ers, even though, as I said before the year, the 49ers are suspect. They have all kinds of issues that we continue to see over the next couple of weeks. So I'm just going to back off. I'm going to say it will be closer than 49-17, and that Dallas will not allow 40 first downs. Maybe 35.
Okay. That's bold.
Let me tell you where I am with New Orleans right now, because this offense has not been what we expected it to be. And there's 2 things that I look at. First and foremost, remember this spring when we all talked about, is Jimmy Graham a wide receiver or is he a tight end, right? Put on the film. Based upon the way he blocks on the edge when called to block, he's a wide receiver because he doesn't hit anybody. It was embarrassing, the lack of effort that I saw last week. Jimmy Graham, when he was called on that aspect of the game, he's a non-participant. And if they don't fix that issue on the edge, they're going to have problems.
But he's not a tough guy.
Well,
as we've established.
But you know what? You have to at least act the part. Act like you're trying to block somebody on the edge.
That Seattle last year run from Cam Chancellor?
Right.
He ran from it.
Okay, that part has got to get fixed. They've got to fix that stuff because you have to be able to do those things when called upon to do those things. You can't go out for a pass every single time. The other thing that has been really interesting in this league is Darren Sproles. Darren Sproles is a specialist that nobody wants to pay. And as soon as he's not on your roster, you struggle.
San Diego?
Right. San Diego. Phillip Rivers went into a funk for a couple of years.
Yeah.
This year right now. And here's the deal. You start as a defense double teaming your slot guys. So Brandon Cook's getting a double team. It's Jimmy Graham's getting a double team. And they look at those backs out of the backfield. And they're like, we're okay one-on-one. We'll rally up, tackle that guy. So he catches the ball for 4 yards. We rally up, we tackle him. It's 3rd down and 5. And that's where they are, where Darren Sproles is a guy where you have to find a way to bracket him, double him when he's coming out of the backfield. And that's a huge factor. You don't have that instant outlet that's instant offense in New Orleans anymore. And there's nobody on that roster that can fill that void. And that's one of the reasons they're really struggling right now for big chunk yardage.
Is it fair for me to conclude that so far Rod Marinelli has done a better job than Rob Ryan has?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think he's been with a dearth of talent. I think he has been amazing. And the whole Mo Claiborne saying he didn't like the way he was, the message of him being benched was delivered. What did you want a 1-800-Flowers gift basket in your locker? A fruit basket that said, "Hey, listen, you don't play here anymore."
Yeah.
Right. I mean, what do you want? I've been benched before, man. It stinks. Right. It stinks. But you don't walk out on your team. No. I know he came back. I know he apologized. But that shows some immaturity, and one of the reasons he's on the bench right now, because he was awful in the game against St. Louis as well.
All right, so Skip says it's not going to be 49-17. Saints are 3-point favorites. Schlereth adds this. They don't have that Darren Sproles X factor on their offense, so that is why they may struggle. We appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
A law enforcement official told the Associated Press he sent the video of Ravens running back Ray Rice punching his then-fiancée in an Atlantic City, New Jersey casino elevator directly to the NFL security director, Jeffrey Miller. The official said he doesn't know if Miller ever saw the tape, but he said he wanted to make sure the NFL had the video before deciding Rice's punishment. The NFL has said repeatedly no one from their office saw the tape until TMZ Sports released the video after the league suspended Rice for just 2 games. Miller said through a spokesperson that he never saw the tape. All right, Stephen A., it is a case of he said, but I'm going to give it to Bayless because he wants to go first on this. What is your whole take on what's happening right now?
Stephen A. Smith, I must admit to you, and I'm just looking at this from a distance, makes me a little more suspicious of this source, just a little more suspicious. It sounds like to me, from a distance, that we have a source here, and I'm going to just guess he's in local law enforcement, maybe in the Atlantic City area. Don't know, but I'm just guessing. But it sounds like he's becoming what I would call a celebrity source. Oh. That he's really enjoying his potential place in NFL history here. That he's becoming a deep throat, if you will. All the President's Men, for those old enough to remember it. And maybe, I don't know, maybe he's even angling here for a movie deal somewhere down the road. Because he continues to release little tidbits, little bombshells. In this case, he says, aha, I did address the tape that he says he sent to the NFL office to Jeffrey Miller. Unfortunately, this source did not know there are 2 Jeffrey Millers in the executive office of the NFL. One is the Senior Vice President of Health and Safety. So there's one Jeffrey Miller, and there's another who's the security chief. So now the NFL obviously has more plausible deniability here because they could say, well, maybe the wrong Jeffrey Miller received it and rejected it as something that was anonymously. The source says he anonymously sent it. He did not attach his name or his title to it, but that he did attach a phone number to a disposable cell phone, he says. A disposable cell phone. And remember, when the first story broke via the AP, he said that he played for them a voicemail from a female voice, he said, in the league office, who says on the voicemail, yes, we received it, and it is terrible, which is what he wrote on the note that he attached, he said, to the tape that he sent. I'm not sure about any of this. I'm not jumping to any conclusions, but Stephen A., you've been at your job now for a long time. You've dealt with a whole lot of sources, as have I, and it sounds like this source is pretty full of himself as he continues to release little details that maybe will add up to something bigger. We will see, but that's my take on it from last night.
Well, I don't disagree with anything that you said. Obviously, this guy appears to want to make headlines and to be, the sports version of Deep Throat, for crying out loud. That's definitely how it comes across. But nevertheless, I think it's fair to surmise that the goal is being accomplished from the perspective is that it's raising additional eyebrows as to those who would doubt the veracity of the NFL's assertions, whether it be that from Commissioner Roger Goodell or from Head of Security Mr. Jeffrey Miller, that they have not seen the tape. Nobody saw the tape until September 8th, as opposed to last April. Here's the bottom line, and this is very uncomfortable for a lot of people in our society to hear, to recognize, or realize, but they're going to have to. Can you prove that Jeffrey Miller or Roger Goodell saw the video? Yes or no? And the answer is no. Unless you can prove it, what they have is what we've learned from our politicians in the nation's capital, along with the bevy of shows that are on the air, whether it be Scandal, The Blacklist, two of my favorites, by the way, or anything else. You've learned the phrase, plausible deniability. Now, that's cynical. There's no question about it. We have no proof whatsoever that Roger Goodell is lying. We have no proof that Jeffrey Miller is lying. Undoubtedly, there are many who will suspect that they are and attach a stronger level of veracity to the assertions being made by this anonymous source to the AP. But in the end, what it comes down to is that none of that qualifies as proof. He can't prove that Jeffrey Miller saw the video. He can't prove that Roger Goodell saw the video. What he can prove is that he sent it to the NFL office and that there's some tape with some woman saying, I saw it, it's terrible. Okay, fine. But that's not going to be enough to get what some people out there appear on a mission to capture.
All right.
And that is guilt attached to Roger Goodell in the NFL league office that indeed they saw that video.
All right. Despite everything I've heard, I stand by what I said the first day we discussed this issue. I believe if Roger Goodell had wanted this video, he could have snapped his fingers and had it in about 15 minutes. He chose not to because he wasn't that interested in it. That's been the league's MO and stance on domestic violence for years and years. I think that's what happened.
In summary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well said. All right.
And I'm saying to you, Skip, in summary, I agree with you there. I totally do. But again, you not paying attention enough, not giving rapt attention, exercising a dereliction of duty, all of those accusations in our society, bottom line is that's not going to be enough for the commissioner to resign, which is what people were calling for. It's not going to happen.
The Jeffrey Miller in question is in London right now preparing for the Dolphins-Raiders game. He issued the statement and he said, quote, I unequivocally deny that I received at any time a copy of the video, and I had not watched it until it was made public on September 8th. He's sticking by that, guys. Derek Jeter and his farewell were mentioned on Twitter over 1.3 million times during the live telecast of his final home game for the Yankees, including tweets that used commemorative hashtags like respect with two, farewell captain, and others gave respect to the captain on Instagram. Here's Chris Paul wearing a respect t-shirt. Carmelo Anthony, looking at a photo of Derek Jeter, says, through your knowledge and wisdom, I now understand. Thanks, Captain. Jeter is the Yankees' all-time leader. Games played at bats, runs, hits, doubles, total bases, and stolen bases. We're talking about where does he rank among the greatest. We're joined now by our baseball analyst, Tim Kirkchin. How are you?
It is an honor to have you at this
It's
table.
royalty.
Well, thanks so much. Glad to be here.
You're upgrading us right now. Go ahead, Stephen A. What do you want to say to him?
I'm saying it's an absolute honor to have the one and only Mr. Tim Kirkjian on the show.
We
Thank
just
you so much
classed
for
up our
joining
set
us.
here.
Okay, so where does Derek
Yes, we
Jeter
did.
rank among Yankee greats?
Well, I get in trouble when I talk about this, but this is the list. This is by the way, this is my list. This is nobody's official list. You're asking me a question.
It's
I'm gonna
your
tell you
list.
what I think.
Yes.
Babe Ruth is #1 of all time. He's the greatest player statistically that's ever lived, okay? He was the best left-handed pitcher in the league. Then he decided, I want to be a hitter, and he became the best hitter. He's still got as many career shutouts as Pedro Martinez. Think about it.
Okay.
He's #1. #2 is Lou Gehrig. He's the greatest first baseman of all time. He's one of the top 4 hitters of all time in my book. And if he hadn't gotten sick, he would have retired as the all-time RBI run-scored leader. It's incredible how great Lou Gehrig was. #3 is Mickey Mantle, okay? We cannot forget how great Mickey Mantle was when he broke in. And that plays today. I'm way in the minority on this, but if you took Mickey Mantle's, absolute skill level back then and put it into today and gave him all the advantages, he would be a great player today. Mickey Mantle's the 3rd greatest center fielder ever. And in his prime, he was Willie Mays' equal. Go back and look at those years in the 50s and
Especially
early
before he tore his knees.
Right.
Yeah.
He was the fastest guy in the league
He was.
and the strongest guy in the league at the same time. #4 is Joe DiMaggio. My goodness, he hit .325 lifetime. Every year he played, he was really good. He lost years to the war. He hit 361 home runs lifetime and struck out 369 times. That's it. That's who Joe DiMaggio was, the 4th greatest center fielder ever. And -- I've got Yogi Berra. People will tell you he's the 2nd best catcher ever behind Johnny Bench. He has more rings than anyone who's ever played the game. And our little thing we ran last night, he played in more games in which his team was above 500 than any player in the history of baseball. And one of the great clutch hitters ever, and a guy who hit 30 homers one year and struck out 17 times. I mean, those are the guys who are ahead of Jeter, okay? On most teams, he would be the greatest player in franchise history by a mile. I'm just saying that on the Yankees and only on the Yankees is Derek Jeter #6 in my book, and that's taking nothing away from him.
Yeah, because look at this list you just named off. I think, of course.
This is the greatest franchise in the history of sports. No team
Not even close.
has any sort
Hold
of
it, stop right there.
Oh, gosh.
Say it again. Say it again, Tim Kirkjian. Say it again.
What does he want me to hit?
Bayless
The
and
greatest
say that again.
franchise.
Those words again.
Yes, Stephen A., the greatest franchise in the history of sports. It's better than the Packers. It's better than the Lakers. It's better than anyone. Just look at the history. And it's important that if baseball statistics really matter enough, that this is why we hate Barry Bonds and we hate these guys who have destroyed the record books, then if you're going to count the record book as that important, then you have to include in the big discussion the guys who set all those records, whether it was 100 years ago or not. Again, way in the minority. I am convinced if we gave Babe Ruth everything he needed for today, he could be a great player today. He was 6'2", 225 in his prime and could run. He was a great athlete. Lou Gehrig weighed 210 pounds. You ever looked at him in those old clips? That's a ball player. That's an athlete. I'm not saying Wee Willie Keeler, who looked like me, is going to be a great player today. I'm saying the biggest and best players from all the eras would be great today. And that's why I have Derek Jeter 6th on the list.
Stephen A. Tim Kirkjian says it is the greatest franchise in the history of sports that brought tears to your eyes. And my favorite is like, what does he want me to say? What is he talking about?
The greatest. The Yankees taught us what greatness is.
Sure.
The greatest. Greater than the Boston Reds, greater than the Boston Celtics, greater than the Lakers, greater than everybody, greater than everybody. But let me ask you this, Tim Kirkjian. It's interesting because I wanted to know, and I agree with your list. I agree with it. But I wanted to know how you feel about some people who would put Mariano Rivera ahead of Derek Jeter. And there are some out there that the only reason why Don Mattingly isn't on the list is because he was the one that never played in the postseason. Outside of that, they considered him more talented, more productive than Derek Jeter. What do you say to that? Mr. Expert, because I believe in you. Please take the floor.
All right, I think Mariano Rivera is the 7th greatest Yankee ever, ahead of Whitey Ford, who's one of the great pitchers who's ever played, and the greatest Yankees starting pitcher ever. But I think Jeter, as an everyday shortstop, playing 150 to 162 games a year, has a greater bearing on the game than Mariano Rivera did as a closer. Rivera is the greatest closer ever. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. The distance between the greatest closer ever and the second greatest is greater than perhaps any other position. That's how great Rivera is. But it's just a matter of the job that they do. When you play shortstop every day for the Yankees for 20 years, I'm sorry, that's more important than being the closer for the Yankees, and that's the only reason I put him ahead of Mariano Rivera.
Stephen A., where do you rank Derek Jeter on your all-time Yankee list?
I have him, I agree with the great Tim Kirkchin. I have him at number 6. I'm looking at Babe Ruth. My list here, I've got Babe Ruth, I've got Garrett, I got DiMaggio. You got to put Mantle up in there. I originally had Derek Jeter at number 5.
Yes, you did.
But the case that Tim Kirkchin made for Yogi Berra, my dad, who's a baseball historian, made for Yogi Berra. And, you know, obviously, and Tim, I've told you this before over the several times I've interviewed you. My father did not allow us. I grew up in Queens, New York, and I was not allowed to watch the Mets until I turned 18 years of age. We are a Yankee household, tried and true. We were on punishment if we watched the Mets. Only the Yankees in our household. So this man tells me Yogi Berra ahead of Derek Jeter.
There you go.
I got to roll with that.
And I'm going
to
make Stephen A. cry again. Jeter's hit last night guaranteed a 22nd consecutive winning season by the Yankees. 22 winning seasons in a row. That's the second longest such streak in baseball history. The longest, of course, is held by the Yankees, which is 39 consecutive years with a winning record. That's how great the Yankees have been and how dominant they've been in this sport.
Okay. We appreciate your list because we have done this debate before, maybe a year and a half ago, and Stephen A. did have Derek Jeter in his top 5, and I had exactly your list with the middle 3 in a little different order because I'm a Mickey Mantle guy, because I knew him very well my days in Dallas, but I have him 2nd. We could debate that all day long, but I also had Yogi 5th, and I had Derek 6 and Mariano 7, so I'm exactly with you. But just so we don't come off as we're being negative toward Derek Jeter on one of the most positive nights for baseball in baseball history, is that fair to say? What happened last night?
Absolutely.
It was spellbinding to me. I told him I'm not a Yankee fan. I had goosebumps all night long watching it on TV and watching the postgame with Derek Jeter. But the point is, for our younger viewers who think we're disrespecting Derek by not putting him, one behind Babe Ruth, is that if you look, and I'm not being critical here, but Derek did not win an MVP. He was 2nd once and 3rd twice. And the people above him won multiple MVPs except for Babe Ruth, who just simply revolutionized the game. And Mickey Mantle had 3 MVPs, and DiMaggio 3, and Gehrig 2, and Yogi 3, and as you said, 10 rings is just, it's mind-blowing. He has to be a little above Derek, who did twice lead the league in hits, which is pretty good. He didn't win a batting title, but he led the league in hits twice. And yet, in the end, his 5 rings doesn't stack up to Yogi's 10. And you could make the case that as great as those old Yankee teams were, the pitching that Derek has had on his side was better than some of these teams had in pitching, because they weren't pitching teams. They just bludgeoned you to death. Am I right? Except for Whitey.
Right.
They never had deep rotations to me. Is that fair to say?
You're right about all of this. And again, the numbers that my top 5 guys throw up there are just ridiculously good. And they have the rings. In fact, most of them have more rings than Derek Jeter.
Yeah.
So this thought that, well, he's a greater winner than them, he's one of the greatest winners ever. He's as good a teammate, which is the greatest compliment you can pay anyone. You're a great teammate. He's as good a teammate as I've ever seen in my life. But when you have the numbers that Mantle, DiMaggio, Yogi, Gehrig, and Ruth have, and then you add the rings in, they have the same rings, if not more than Jeter. That's what separates them.
Right.
For any young person who actually thinks that we're being critical of any way of Derek Jeter, did you watch him play? He's the face of the game. The reason he's the captain of the Yankees is he runs hard to first base on every play. He even said it last night. Nobody played harder than I did. That's the only time I've ever heard him compliment himself. But that's precisely why we need to really relish in what he did. And last night was a tribute to how he's played the game for 20 years.
Well said. Jinx, thanks so much for being here. Tim Kirkchin is leaving us, Stephen A.
I made him cry.
He did. Yeah, look at him.
It's all right. He's blessed us with his presence and the appropriate information and accolades about El Capitan and the greatest franchise in the history of sports. There's another. Why can't we end the show now? Why can't we just end the show now?
We'd like to. Talk to the producers. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Rodgers gets the snap. Blitz is on. Rodgers scrambles left. Winds up right. He's got Cobb at the 10 to the 5. Touchdown and a dagger. Oh, my goodness. An NFC North Division Championship dagger of 47 yards. And the Packers are going to the playoffs.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the final takes. Packers defeated the Bears in Week 17 last season for the NFC North title. We just showed you that. Today we want to know who wins when they meet up again on Sunday, Stephen A.
I'm going to roll with the Bears. I don't like the fact that Aaron Rodgers, the bad man that he is telling everybody to relax. His defense can't get off the field on third downs. His offensive line can't protect him. Nobody outside of Jordy Nelson can seem to create separation and get open, and they can't run the football. I'm going to go with the Bears on this week, and I think this will be the wake-up call for the Packers, but after they lose to the Bears this week.
Wow. I'm shocked by that pick. This is the point last year that the Packers turned it around. I just think they're a little better team than the Bears. I do think it's going to be a bad man versus Cutler shootout, but I'm going to go with the bad man in this one, 33-31.
Wow. Dolphins head coach Joe Philbin refused to say whether Ryan Tannehill will start for the Dolphins leading up to this weekend's game versus the Raiders in London. Ryan Tannehill said he wasn't a fan of the way his coach handled the situation. In the end, Tannehill says he will start. But what impact will that have on this game, Stephen A.?
I think it'll have somewhat of an impact because distractions are never good. But I think it helps that this game is not going to be in Oakland, that it's going to be in London. And I don't trust the Raiders at all because I just don't believe in them. I don't believe in them as an organization. I don't believe in their talent. Matter of fact, the only person I do believe in is Justin Tuck, and that's based on resume and my affection for him. Nothing more. I'm picking the Dolphins to win this game in spite of Philbin, who I don't believe should be the head coach of the Dolphins anyway.
I think the Dolphins will win this game, but I said it before the draft, Ryan Tannehill is not a long-term answer as a starting quarterback, and I think Joe Philbin knows that now.
Panthers, Ravens, who wins, Stephen A.?
I'm going with the Ravens because the Panthers can't seem to protect Cam Newton because he's taking too many hits, and they're not running the football effectively either. You've got to be able to do both things. If you're going to beat the Baltimore Ravens, I think they win this game.
I think Steve Smith has such a big game in this game that he'll change his name to Stephen A. Smith after this game. I think the Ravens will win at 24-14.
Quickly, Jets-Lions, Stephen A., who wins?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear, Kerry.
Jets-Lions, who wins?
I'll pick it.
Yeah,
I'll pick Detroit, 20-17.